everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to talk about today comes from 1990. This is Ju Dou, and it stars the great Gong Li and directed by Zhang Yimou. And it was the first mainland Chinese movie to be nominated for an Academy Award at the Oscars. But the officials in China didn't really like the movie, so it wasn't until 2 years later, in 1992, that it was finally released in China after worldwide acclaim, both for Gong Li and director Zhang. So this is a film movement release, just came out a few days ago, as a matter of fact, and they've been working on, I think, Red Lantern and To Live, two more collaborations between this director and Gong Li. I think they made 7 films in total. I think this is their third collaboration. Red Sorghum, the first, and Red Lantern, I think, is the next one in this series of films, in which Gong Li became a superstar in China and around the world. She even appeared in Miami Vice and a couple other English language movies. So Ju Dou is a story, as the title say. It's set in rural China in the 1920s. It could be the 1820s. This is a very primitive area of China. It's set in a fabric dyeing mill. So we see a lot of fabrics being washed in colorful vats and then hung up to dry. Very colorful film. Ju Dou is. But there's only 3 employees. There's an older man, probably in his 50s. His adopted nephew is the other co-worker. He goes out when they have enough goods to sell. He's the one who goes out into the countryside, small inns, selling this fabric. When he returns from one of these trips, he finds that his uncle has gotten a new wife. He's bought a new wife. This is his 3rd one. The first 2 died, and he's eager for a male heir because in his clan, they have no male heir. And this is a very young woman, played by Gong Li. Her character's name is Ju Dou, and he's a sadistic guy. It's intimated that he's impotent. And he takes it out on his wives, probably his first 2 wives, certainly, with Ju Dou. And she's full of bruises. Now, when the nephew comes back, he's not a young guy. He's 40, and his uncle has been advised, he needs to have a wife. And when he comes back, he's so entranced by Ju Dou's beauty. She's also a worker, so this is now a 3-employee mill. In which we see in some detail how fabric was dyed in more primitive times. So the uncle, very sadistic. Here's a picture of the actor. I'm not going to try to provide names for these characters, and we see fire there, and fire is a big element in this movie. It's a romance, a romantic melodrama, and this is melodrama to the max. I mean, they don't leave no stone unturned in this melodramatic, including, like, there's an Oedipal aspect to the film. The film is very much anti-patriarch. Ju Dou is trapped in this patriarchal system, even if there's nobody really to complain to. She's the property of her husband. The whole feudal system, this clan system, is definitely under attack in this film. And so this one, how the authorities in China would see this, they would see this, well, we've wiped away all that, so we're doing good. At least on the surface, this is not a political film, but it's certainly political in the sense that the old ways were pretty awful, especially for women. So so the lovers, this is a very intense intense romance, as I mentioned, and between the lovers. And you might be, this is Gong Li. In real life, this actor, who was also a big star, they actually had a relationship during this time. So the intensity of these lovers, even that one shot there, might remind you of Mitsuguchi, who also, had doomed lovers in his plots, and especially, he was always after describing the terrible plight that women had in this patriarchal feudal system. Of course, in Japan, you might even be reminded of 50s melodrama in Hollywood, which pulled out all the stops melodramatic-wise. It's a storyline that really, you could see a variation of it in 1930s Hollywood, where a younger man falls in love with the young wife of his uncle, and all the tragedies that might develop from that. So this is a film that aesthetically is just absolutely beautiful. The colors here are fantastic. Now, it doesn't say anything about it in the supplements. And the supplement, there's a commentary and a couple other supplements. No one mentions here that this is being filmed. Ju Dou has been filmed using the 3-strip Technicolor process in 1990. When I first heard that or read that in some of my research, I couldn't believe it. I looked it up, and in 1978, the 3-strip Technicolor process, which was the process used Gone with the Wind up through the early 50s, and had just, incredible range of color. Sometimes in Hollywood they used it a little bit garishly, but it's still a wonder to behold today. So in 1978, the Chinese government bought the last remaining Technicolor lab, which I believe was in Britain. They brought it to Beijing because they were making all these propaganda films in red. They wanted really vibrant red, which 3-strip Technicolor is definitely going to give you. But there was this, but we see here, and I was astonished when I was watching this movie. I did see it at some point, probably in the 1990s, but I was just astonished with this Blu-ray. It's a beautiful, beautiful restoration. All the variations of color. The film opens with a big emphasis on yellow, especially as pertaining to Gong Li, and golden. She's sometimes framed like in golden aura around her, and we get the reds, deep reds, we get blues. It's just, when I was watching the commentary, I sort of, which isn't very good, I sort of tuned out what they were saying, and I wasn't even paying attention to the plot. I was just looking at the color scene by scene. There's brown colors and different shades that you're not going to see in the more sophisticated color palette that we have today. But 3-strip Technicolor certainly had its artistic value, and it's really great to see a 1990 manifestation of that. So, and director Zhang, he was a graduate of the Beijing Film Academy, which was just formed in the early 1980s, I guess, to train directors and so that in all technical aspects of making films, so that China could compete with the rest of the world as far as film festivals and prestige. So he started out as a cinematographer, and you can certainly see that in Ju Dou, and on his first 2 movies. And then I think this, as I said before, this is probably his 3rd movie, and he's part of what's called the 5th generation. In the commentary, it's so disappointing. About 3/4 of this commentary is taken up talking about what a 5th generation director and 6th generation director was, and all the different, when it might have happened, and also quite a bit about Dr. Zhang's career-wise in describing plots of his other films, whilst not hardly noticing the film that and they acknowledged that at the end of the film. I don't think they talked 10 or 15 minutes about the film that we were watching, but instead exhibiting their great knowledge. And director Zhang is still around. He's in his 70s now, and his most recent film, I think, was his most popular, commercially popular film. He made Hero and House of Red Dragons, House of Flying Daggers, I think is I should have looked it up. So there's a lot of movies that Hero, I think, is another one that played here in the U.S. But he made a lot of films, and in the commentary they state that not all of them are great, but certainly this one is, Ju Dou. So in Gong Li's collaboration, there's 7 films that they made. Gong Li then went off on her own, and she's not making movies anymore. They did reunite, I think, in the 20-teens for some movies, but Gong Li has not made another film since 2020, I believe. So the supplements here, we have this commentary by 2 Asian film historians, and they certainly know their business, but they're just talking to each other. As when you have 2 people on a commentary, they often they're just talking to each other rather than to the audience. And then we get a visual essay that's pretty good by another Asian film expert, and then a pretty interesting piece with various contemporary filmmakers, women filmmakers, describing their relationship to the film, and they're very interesting interpretations of it, because this is a film that you can interpret. I mentioned the Oedipal. I think director Zhang downplays that element in the film, but it certainly is. It's certainly there. Here is the little boy who plays a huge part in the end of the film, and actually the last third of the film. It's because it is a film where this little boy might ask himself, "Who is my father?" So there is that Oedipal element to the film. But to me, the melodrama, some might say, well, it's a little bit much, especially at the end. But I think from a visual standpoint, this is just an outstanding film. And I think hopefully some films wind up on Canopy eventually. I think there may be 1 or 2 there now. I think Farewell My Concubine, which has Gong Li, it's not a Zhang film, but Gong Li is in that film. I think that's streaming on Canopy. So if you want to see another Gong Li movie, and hopefully this one will come out, and hopefully Film Movement will stream soon on Canopy, and hopefully soon we'll get a couple more of these Gong Li movies, who is just an incredible movie star. I think she's up there with one of the great movie stars of the last, 35, 40 years. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who listened. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.